Welcome to Swayam MOOC course NGOs and Sustainable Development, Unit 2, Module 10, NGOs and Participatory Management. In this module, you will learn the importance of participatory management, understand the effectiveness of participatory management in NGOs, discern the role of NGOs for good governance. Introduction. NGOs have witnessed phenomenal growth in recent years. They assuming leading positions in development work is due to the push given by the government and corporate funding. NGOs have assumed dominant roles in the community as their activities ensure accelerated socio-economic development. NGOs act as implementers, catalysts and partners. They mobilize resources to feed people caught by a natural disaster. They drive change and partner with other organizations to tackle problems and to address human needs. NGOs vary by method. Some are primarily advocacy in nature and some conduct programs and activities. For example, Oxfam is concerned with poverty alleviation. They may provide needy people with the equipment and skills to obtain food and drinking water. The Forum for Fact-Finding, Documentation and Advocacy, which is commonly known as FFDA, helps in providing legal assistance to victims who have become The Forum for Fact-Finding, Documentation and Advocacy, which is FFDA, helps in providing legal assistance to individuals who have become victims of human rights abuse. The Afghanistan Information Management Services, another NGO, provides technical products and services to support developmental activities. During 1992, the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, attended by around 2,400 representatives from across the world, was the first to demonstrate the power of international NGOs in environmental issues and sustainable development. Transnational NGOs networking became very extensive since 1992 summit. The concept of participation has become important in the struggle to improve the effectiveness of both management of organizations and management of development. However, NGOs get confused between these two terms. Management of the organization refers to management of the NGO itself, while management of development is how NGOs manage the various projects and activities it undertakes to help the needy people. In this module, we will be focusing on how NGOs need to manage to implement the projects and other programs, and hence it is nothing but management of development. Now let us see what I mean by participatory management and participatory development. Participatory management refers to the involvement of staff, presumably stakeholders, in the choice regarding organizational policies, strategy and operations, in addition to the design of organizational activities, all within the purview of the NGOs. While participatory development, it refers to the beneficiaries participated. While participatory development refers to the beneficiaries' participation, that is the community participation in the design, execution and assessment of initiatives taken up by the NGO. The term again participatory management and participatory development have been frequently used interchangeably. In this section, we will find what is participatory management, learn about top down versus bottom up approach which is best suited for an NGO's functioning, the emerging themes of participatory management, characteristics, the indicators and the constraints. Now let us see what is participatory management. Giving group members like employees of local residents the ability to take part in organizational decision making is known as participatory management. It is used as an alternative to conventional vertical management structures, which have proven to be less productive because when employees do not participate, they become less interested in what their leaders want from them. They feel their work or opinions are not valued by management. Now, let us see what we mean by top down and bottom up and which is best suited for an NGO. The top down approach, as far as the implementation of projects or functioning of NGOs are concerned, is found not very successful. Rather, the bottom up approach, wherein there is voluntary participation of the beneficiaries in the NGO for the completion of the project, starting from the grassroots, is found to be very successful. It requires NGOs to participate and take up the projects starting from the ground level. They have the knowledge and expertise for meaningful participation and for taking decisions that will affect the livelihood of the community in which the projects has to be undertaken. A bottom up strategy encourages people to take any opposing decisions or actions that may sway the decision. The UN recognizes the importance of public engagement and pushes the greater public to participate in the decision making process, and that is considered as the basic aim and the tool for development policy for NGOs. Once the bottom up strategy is adopted, significant participation from the NGO is needed. As they carry out their work at the grassroots level, these social action organizations are able to describe the requirements of the public in a better forum. They have the knowledge and the experience that enable for meaningful engagement, and they have the influence in the selection of choices which will in turn have long term impact on the target community's quality of life. NGOs have a very high level of participation. Typically, they operate on a very small scale. Some of their activities rely on remaining modest and resource intense. In some instances, NGOs have created a participatory method that they have independently expanded to encompass major programs and have shown to broadly replicate or scale up by other groups and other government bodies. Diverse strategies have been employed to enable effective NGO programs to be scaled up and mainstreamed wherever possible without losing the fundamental essence. During this process, the NGOs ensure they do not become hierarchical or bureaucratic. This can entail building NGOs' capacities through training and encouraging collaboration amongst various NGOs. Self-help projects serve as a metaphor for participatory orientation, since they involve the deployment of a project by local residents who contribute the resources such as money, land, tools, labor, materials. Again, this is a bottom-up model. Participation begins with the requirement of definition in the traditional community development, the project starting from the grassroots and continues through the planning and implementation phases. Participatory approach is a common tenet for cooperatives. There are several themes that emerge in the participatory approach. Several authors argue that a participatory approach to management is well suited for NGOs whose primary work involves promotion of participation and empowerment of the beneficiaries. Several themes emerge. Number one, NGOs require a new professionalism wherein there is a need for the change in the values and attitudes and behavior of the NGO staff themselves, for they need to empower the beneficiaries in the community. The second theme that emerges based on the literature is that the NGOs need to decentralize and bring in participatory decision making structures. It needs to adopt a problem solving style rather than going for a predictive approach to management. It needs to ensure flexibility and to have the ability to adapt to the changing environmental scenarios. The third theme that emerges is the expectation of the NGO staff. NGO staffs are highly committed to their work because of widely shared values and beliefs. This creates a sense of ownership because of the democratic and participatory nature of the management. Further, respect of workers leads to improved organizational functioning. Now, let us see what are the characteristics of such a participatory style of management. The characteristics include participation as a way of life, equal decision making opportunity is present, participation requires a shift in the mentality, the precise of participation is shared interests, participation is facilitated through combined thinking and effort. Participation is dependent on the necessity of it, and someone has to initiate the process of participation as an activist. Now, let us see the indicators for participatory effectiveness. A flat management structure is necessary if we want a participatory style in NGOs, because usually it is decentralized authority that functions. Organizational structures at the community level at which the funding and or decisions are delegated. Use of iterative planning process involving consultation with the local communities as and when needed. Contributions of cash, labor, materials, local facilities by the community members and organizations, making them clients rather than beneficiaries of the NGO. Staff requirement criteria, the incentives given and the training, all this is required, and they are the indicators that a participatory style is evolving in the NGO. Strong field presence outside the metropolitan areas with high proportion of staff and local people working in the NGO indicates the participatory nature. Community leaders and members have a positive perception of the NGO. Turnover of the client groups as they graduate over time and intense field attention is transferred to the new group indicates the participatory style of functioning by the NGO. Of course, there are constraints attached in all this when we go for a participatory style of functioning in NGO. Some of these constraints include community related constraints or citizen involvement. The language of the local community, the semantics, the titles, all these represent some constraints. Holistic versus traditional approach, the resource allocation, the resources and processes, constraints related to project scope, profit driven considerations, psychological barriers, sociological barriers, all these act as constraints for the participatory style of functioning. In addition, also the economic, financial, technical barriers also act as constraints for the NGO to take up a participatory style of functioning. It is necessary to remove these challenges. Scaling up may also involve training of the NGO staff in the participatory methods and relaxing some of the regulations and laws. It is helpful to keep in mind that government agencies may need to scale up, down in the sense of decentralizing and It is helpful to keep in mind that government agencies may need to scale down in the sense of decentralizing their operation by bringing in more flexibility and micro variability into their operations, for they are all working for promoting the NGO and for uplifting the community. This makes it simpler to collaborate with regional and local NGOs in addition to moving decision making closer to the population to whom the project is going to be carried out. NGOs and participatory management, they both go hand in hand. NGOs are gaining importance with the increased implementation of international projects. Greater attention is paid on how NGOs function to implement the projects such that it reaches the grassroots, which is often claimed to be participatory in character. Holcomb during 1995 points that many NGOs speak of empowering and participating, in which staff are seen as resource with skill and capabilities. They are encouraged to take the initiative in solving problems. Moreover, Chambers during 1997 argues that the institutional challenge for all development agencies is to flatten and soften the hierarchy, to develop a culture of participatory management, to recruit a gender mix such as having more number of men and women, to have a disciplinary mix, like having different sectors like manufacturing sector, industry sector, insurance sector, automobile. Similarly, having a mix of functional areas like operations, marketing, personal, etc., and have such people who are committed to work for the NGO so that they can serve the people, to adopt and promote procedures and norms, rewards which will permit and encourage more participation at all levels within the NGO as well as at the community. Despite the growing interest in the participatory management, the term continues to be complex and sometimes unclear. A degree of rhetoric continues to be around this term. Though much has been debated and people have accepted that a participatory nature is a good style or a good model for the NGO, yet not much is researched on it. The heightened interest is because of the increased stress on the participatory management style in all spheres of management, and this has also got into the reins of NGOs. People participation, according to the Human Development Report UNDP 1993, is becoming the most important criteria. Smiley in 1995 points that for the NGO community, for it to be bilateral and multilateral, participatory style of functioning is very essential. While NGOs have been examining the ways to increase participation of the beneficiaries in various community development projects, yet they come under severe pressure since NGOs are called to professionalize their entire process. In this regard, the growth in the number of NGOs and their dependence on the donors have become a deciding factor on how to bring in professionalism into the NGO's operation. The pressure to professionalize the functioning of the NGO have resulted in widespread use of instruments and techniques such as logical framework analysis, object oriented project planning, which is commonly known as ZOPP, participatory rural assessment, which is called as the PRA, the rapid rural assessment called as the RRA. Further, it has also resulted in improving the administrative aspects of their program by bringing in systematic and scientific way of doing things, such as writing proposals, bringing in budgets, bringing in reports. So, the management aspects are brought into the NGO's operation. It has also kindled interest to adopt contemporary management approaches such as management by objectives, strategic planning, stakeholder analysis, mission based management. However, there are a few criticisms in the appropriateness of adopting such management approaches into the NGOs. This called for a NGO management debate. Several researchers and consultants have tried to answer this question, such as which theories of management, which management models can be applied to NGOs. There is no consensus regarding any particular management theory or model that can be applied to NGOs. Campbell during 1987, however, has proposed 4 schools of thought on how management principles can be applied to NGOs. The first school of thought insists that the critical issue of NGO is that it is voluntary organization, and hence they should draw on the principles of voluntary sector principles. The second view is that NGO contexts are critical in determining the type of management they need, and the principles of development management should therefore strongly influence the NGO's management. The third view adds a cultural dimension. It states that instead of just applying a concept or a principle or adopting a Western principle to an Eastern culture, it is necessary to bring in a cultural perspective. It questions how a Western model can be applied to an Indian situation, for example. So, it stresses the need for indigenous approaches and states the cultural environment wherein the NGO is functioning has to consider the cultural aspects in the nature of its management. The fourth dimension is the arguments for a distinct approach for NGO's management, and this has been unanimously accepted. The reason being, it is argued that there is no necessity to bring in a distinct approach to NGO's operation. An NGO is just like any other organization. So, it is not necessary to have a distinct approach. To say NGOs should adopt a participatory style of management need not be always correct. So, that is the fourth principle. However, this debate continues whether to have participatory management or a separate NGO management style. Though the arguments continue, a distinct approach to management does not stand good. There are many theories and concepts that NGOs and any commercial establishment all have a management principles and can follow the management principles. Since the turn of the century, especially since the early 1960s, the interest and support of participation, however, has been increasing, and it is found that any participation by the individuals involved will result in effective output. So, generic management has clearly defined that task oriented authoritarian approach on the one hand and employee centered democratic participatory style on the other has its own advantages and disadvantages, and depending upon the NGOs, its functioning, its culture, its context, the NGOs can adopt a certain style of management for its functioning. Japanese organizations such as Hitachi, Nissan, Honda, Mitsubishi, Toyota are often cited as examples for participatory style of management. Further, during 80s, management principles such as Japanese management style, team working, TQM, that is total quality management, have all started gaining popularity. However, the management debate, NGO management debate continues and there is still no answer to it. Further, whether a particular management principle or technique can be applied to the functioning of the NGO remains a question. Whether this will be useful in the context of NGO when it is operating at a local community level is a question. All these are debates, all these are questions that needs answer. However, all said and done, it is found that when individuals participate in the decision making process or when they participate in the activities of the community, of course the effectiveness of that activity improves. Considering this, it is found that the debate has tilted towards adopting contemporary management styles and instruments in the NGO's functioning for bringing in better performance. The appropriateness of participatory style of management for NGOs, it is found that it is very good. A participatory style, when every individual in the community gets involved in the project, the effectiveness of that project is very good, and hence a participatory style is of course very advantageous. Further, it is suggested that appropriate management principles can be adopted for the functioning of the NGOs. There are a number of perspectives on the growing interest in participatory style of management. An instrumental view of participation is that greater the participation, greater will be the efficiency and consequently greater will be the outcome. This is evinced from the statement made by Ochi during 1981, who states, decision making by consensus, that means participation, has been the subject of a great deal of research in Europe and US over several decades, and it is evidenced that consensus approach yields more creative decisions and more effective implementation rather than an autocratic and individual based decision making. So, a participatory style is linked to a learning organization. Organizations that will become effective and fruitful in the future are those who discover how to tap people's commitment and capacity to learn at all levels of the organization. Now, let us see the role of NGOs in participatory governance. NGOs talk about empowering style of management wherein employees are encouraged to take the initiative of problem solving and are considered as the talent and resource of the organization. They are also treated as the assets of the organization. The concept of participatory management has become more important when it is management of development. many NGOs have started operating in India in an effort to support the participatory development and to combat poverty, particularly in the rural and semi-urban regions of the nation. The interventions provided by these NGOs not only complement those made by the government in the socio-economic sectors, but they also significantly improve the living conditions of the underprivileged and the marginalized communities. Participatory management can increase the organization's efficacy and capacity when it comes to development management, which helps the management with good leadership. Additionally, it helps to boost organizational decision making and the project activity implementation's transparency. Every activity related to social mobilization, group organization and planning, operation and management uses a participatory approach. Several authors argue that a participatory approach to management is particularly suitable for NGOs whose work involve promotion of participation and the empowerment of beneficiaries. NGOs take part in discussions about trade, about environment, about climate change during meetings, sometimes at a global forum also. The negotiation processes with the non-state actors has undergone significant alterations as a result of the involvement of the NGOs at all levels at the community, city, national and international. NGOs' involvement is essential for good governance. In addition to their local and national presence, the government welcomes the involvement of various NGOs in their consultation meetings. Business, unions and NGOs take part in the decision making process, which is essential for the upliftment of the society. The NGOs are the ones who can express the needs of the general public because they have their hands on the community and they are in touch with the grassroots common person. With the aid of the NGOs at the local, numerous industrial firms have started community outreach and development projects through their CSR activities. This is to foster a friendly business environment in the community. Business organizations sponsor NGOs so they can offer a range of services to the public. In recent years, the government of several developing nations have also enlisted the help of such NGOs to carry out various grassroots development projects. At the same time, the local government takes their assistance in carrying out various operations, various projects intended for the targeted social groups at the remote rural areas. To improve the involvement of the local communities in the development process and to encourage the establishment of responsible local institutions, NGOs have employed techniques as mentioned earlier, the PRA, which is Participatory Rural Appraisal. Participatory NGOs consider themselves as enablers and capacity builders and won't let any official programs compromise on their goals. So, they carry out the activities and the operations in a very systematic manner using the PRA method. NGOs act as facilitators for the participatory development. A new definition of the role of the state and the civil society in addressing the national development priorities has resulted from the emergence of the concept of participatory development, which is the development that is thought of as being not only society centered but also people centered and very democratic in nature. The remarkable growth of NGOs and their contribution to supporting the society has drawn lots of attention. NGOs involve the beneficiaries in the decision making process. They identify, they implement and further they monitor and evaluate the projects that have the effect on their own lives. NGOs take on a facilitating role when beneficiaries take part in these projects. It is widely contested whether or not development projects can or have truly embraced the concept of participation as a tool for social transformation. The politics of participation can range from just a token presence or completely participating and bringing in a transformation in the society. It depends on who participates in those projects, and it is welcomed that every beneficiary participates and brings in a transformative participation culture. The participatory rural assessment is a procedure that aids the integration of the tribal communities irrespective of their caste and creed to get involved in the project and contribute for the welfare of the community. The need for including the entire community is the strategy behind PRA. Through the participatory learning and action, the NGOs ensure everyone gets involved and everyone supports the project. The steps in the PRA includes empowerment, respect, localization, enjoyment, and finally inclusiveness. Empowerment: the local community gets empowered because they are part of this project and they pretty well know that it is their community that gets benefited and hence they feel empowered in contributing. Respect: when they find that they are part of the decision making process and the local government leaders look up to them, they feel that they get the respect that is required and they come to respect the counterparts, the NGOs who are the handholders and who help them to get the project be implemented in their community. So, to enjoy the local culture, they try to understand the local people, and NGOs take hand in hand and contribute to the society. Localization: the administrators become aware of and comprehend the local representative style. This encourages them to employ the natural resources that is available in the community where the projects have to be implemented. Enjoyment: working with the locals is a lot of fun, and NGOs have realized that working with the community helps in benefiting both the NGOs and the community for the successful implementation of the project. Inclusiveness: once the stakeholders, the government or the NGOs are sensitive to the needs of the local people, it encourages the community as a whole to participate in the process. This brings the participation of the marginal and the vulnerable group who live in the vicinity of the remote areas. Now, there are certain challenges and as well as advantages. Now, let us first see the advantages of participatory style of management. It is a natural approach. The program responsiveness is very high and the staff feel they are empowered to carry out the work. There is a downward accountability of the projects and it promotes democracy because it automatically brings in a participatory nature. However, there are certain challenges when we go in for a participatory style in NGOs. They are difficulty in harmonizing dissimilar interests of various community groups who will be present in the implementing site, possibility of certain people capturing away the development benefits, not reaching the full mass of the community. Complexity involved in combining the corporate mindset of the corporate donors and the requirements of the beneficiaries, and networking may become a constraint, networking of the government, the NGOs and the community. Now, let us see some case studies where there is a participatory style of NGO which was found to be very successful. The Malawi education system. The influence of NGOs on Malawi's education system can be tracked back to the European missionaries, which is reported in Banda's paper in 1982. The early missionaries NGO lacked the coordination, however, they brought in a transformation in that educational system. After 1901, the missionary participation in education came down and it was simply in assisting the government in providing the resources and the school infrastructure. While many regional and international NGOs work to provide the basic education, particularly for children and adults, they slowly became less active because of less participation from the community. The second case study is the water aid. This is again a bottom up strategy which was adopted and WaterAid is a UK NGO. Appropriate intermediary technology, which is a low level technology, was proposed and given to the local participant. The local WaterAid installed wells and hand pumps in Africa, and this is a very good example of a bottom up development scheme. They only costed £292 each, and they use the technology that the local people can understand, can use, and they can also maintain on their own and repair if it's required. This provided clean water for the village, and it eliminated the need for women and children to walk long distances to get water. Also, this time that they saved in traveling helped the children to study and get educated. So, this was a bottom up strategy which worked very well for Africa. And again, it is a participatory style of NGO where all the community people were involved in running and maintaining this well. The third example is the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, an illustration of what may be accomplished by the NGO is the Aga Khan Rural Development Program in Pakistan, which is a dedicated bottom up planning, and it combines strong technical expertise with efficient institutional development at the village level. The program reached 38,000 homes, and it established around 110 women clubs in just over 4 years, and this was for installing infrastructural projects, and it was an impetus for institution building. Next, coming to the Balochistan Primary Education Program is again a community support approach, and it serves as an example of how government flexibility can enable an innovative pilot project which was run by a very small NGO, and it was successfully expanded and integrated into the government initiatives. UNICEF and European Union supported this program, and over a period of time it brought all the girl children back to school and to get educated. Thus, participatory management style in NGOs is a very profitable venture, and it is found to be a very effective management principle and style of functioning, and it was found to be successfully used in many of the NGOs. Now, let us see some questions and answers. Question 1. What is the main role of an NGO? NGOs activities include but are not limited to environmental, social, advocacy, human rights work. They can work to promote social or political change on a global scale as well as locally. NGOs play a very important role in developing the society, improving the communities, and promoting citizen participation. And for all this, a participatory style is found to be very effective. How do NGOs help society? NGO enables citizens to work together voluntarily to promote social values and civic goals, which are very important. They promote the local initiative and problem solving. Through their work in a broad array of fields, maybe environment, health, poverty, education, culture, arts, NGOs help in the socio-economic development of the nation either directly or indirectly through their style of functioning. Why are NGOs important for good governance? Answer is NGOs are able to educate the public and put pressure on the public policy. NGOs act as an important pressure group for the democracy in the government. They also mobilize and organize the poor people to demand for quality service for their community, and they ensure that accountability is present in the performance of the government functionaries even at the grassroots level. So, in this module, we have learnt the importance of participatory management, understood the effectiveness of participatory management for NGOs, and discerned the role of NGOs for good governance through their participatory style of functioning. Thank you.